Thank you for logging on to the Love Factor today. We're going to be continuing the topic, My God, My Greatest and Only Desire. Last week, we talked about the importance of having just one focus in life, one desire, and making God that ultimate desire, making God that ultimate focus, because everything else that we need, that we want, is in Him. And anything that is outside of God is not something that we want to pursue. It's not a desire that we want to have, because there's something about desire, like we mentioned, that pulls you in. There's something about desire that causes you to want to continue to seek and look for that which you desire. That which you desire, your soul will continue to think about and long for. And it's important to make God that ultimate desire of our hearts. We really, really have to gaze and look and fixate on Him, and truly begin to understand the extent of His love for us. Because if we don't, it's very easy for fleeting desires to come in, and it just takes our attention. And what God is looking for is looking for our attention, is looking for our heart. Because if we say we love God, how much attention do we pay to Him? How much time do we give to Him? For me, this is really just to share my personal journey. I shared my salvation experience last week, and how just getting to some crossroads in my life, I made the wrong turn. And I wanted to share with you, because I don't know where you're at today. If you're watching, you might feel like I'm too far gone. I've failed God so many times. I've made so many mistakes. I don't know if God would still give me a chance, or if I can still get to be as close to God as I would like to. I don't know if I can still be all that God has called me to be. But I want to assure you today that God does not give up on us. You see, He knows the end from the beginning, and He doesn't judge us based off of our present situation. He judges us based off of where He knows that we can get to. And if God is still holding on to you, calling on to you, especially if you're watching this today, then I do believe that God has a plan for you. And God wants to draw you closer to Himself. And irrespective of whatever it is that you might have done, God is going to use you. If you look at the people that God used, and God not only used but highly esteemed in the Bible, if you think about the 5 women in the lineage of Jesus that were mentioned, one of them was an adulteress, Bathsheba, who committed adultery with King David. One of them was Tamar. She slept with her father-in-law. You will think, how could this person be one of the grandmothers of Jesus? But here we are. She was, Ruth was a Moabite. She was a foreigner. She wasn't an Israelite. And God had even said that a Moabite will not come into my presence. Ruth was a Moabite, and yet she was one of the grandmothers of Jesus. And then if you look at, we've talked about Tamar, we've talked about Ruth, we've talked about Bathsheba, but there's also Rahab, who was a prostitute. Rahab was a prostitute that in this day and age, if we say prostitute in our world today, we would not think that this would be a candidate for one of the grandmothers of Jesus. But here we are. Rahab truly was in that lineage. And what that tells me is God is not using your past to judge you. God is looking at every decision that you're going to make once you are armed with the knowledge that He's calling you to Himself. What do you do with that knowledge? What are the steps that you take? And even though you failed God, if your heart could still be contrite, if you can still be sorry and repentant and genuinely wants to do good and do right by God, God is there to help you. He's there. He wouldn't cast you away. A tree that is cut off still has hope. So I want to assure you today that you're not too far gone. You're not beyond the reach of God's love. My story is a prime example of God reaching out to me over and over and over again when I didn't feel like I deserved it. I was in the United States, like I mentioned on the last podcast, and I felt like I failed God because I knew that that was not what God wanted for my life when I made that choice to come into the United States. But the desire was so strong to be here that I took that bait. I know it's a bait. It was a bait. I took that bait and I came in. And unfortunately for me, I met someone. I started to, I think, deceive myself, I would say, because this person came and I gravitated towards him. It was more on the physical aspect of, oh, this person is good looking. He had all of those things that in my flesh I would desire. And yeah, I was really at that crossroad of being a spiritual person versus being someone that will give in to those desires of the flesh. And unfortunately, I knew that this man was pulling me away from God. This man ended up cheating on me, and I found out, I think God was looking out for me even then. God was looking out for me. I found out that this man was cheating, so we broke up. I broke up with him. We went our separate ways. I remember a man of God, a prophet in a church, just came to the church to speak and said, there's someone here, you're brokenhearted. God says to tell you what's in front of you is greater than what you left behind. And that gave me a lot of comfort because I was extremely heartbroken. And then, after that, we went our separate ways. Then I met someone, I met my husband. But at that time, I was about to leave. I was about to leave the state I was in. I was in Massachusetts. I was about to leave Massachusetts. So I left to move to Chicago because there was opportunities in Chicago for employment. Because at that time, I'd mentioned that I didn't have the right documentation. So shortly thereafter, to the glory of God, I was able to get a social security number and work authorization. So I started to work, and an opportunity came for me to move to Chicago to get a tech job. And so I went to Chicago. I did some training, and then I started working. I met my husband before I left, and at that time we were just friends, and we started to talk, and I didn't think anything more. I didn't think anything to us exchanging numbers more than, okay, we were friends, we were in a particular business together, so we're doing that business together. And so that was the extent to which I thought we were communicating, was really to talk about the business. And then he started to call me and we were talking, and at that point, I then realized how close it was to God, how much he loved the Lord, and that really got me. I was like, this is it for me. I've always asked God and prayed to God, God, bring me a man that loves you. I want a man that loves you with all of his heart, with all of his soul. And that was what God did. Now, to cut the long story short, I was out of state, so he came to visit me in Chicago. Shortly after he came to visit me, I started to pull back and think we're not compatible, just because he's very quiet. And when we met, we didn't have much to talk about. So I started to think, I don't know if we're compatible. I don't know if this is the right person. And so I broke up the relationship. But something inside of me was saying that this man is a good man. There is no reason to break up with this person. And if I'm being honest, I think I was looking more on the surface, physical attributes that I thought I wanted at that time. And so I was saying, okay, we're not gelling, we're not compatible, and so I drew back. Now we broke up, unfortunately, and at that time, when I told him, he just, took it in stride and said, okay, no worries. But I prayed about it. I'm sure this is what God is saying. And I was like, yes, I have. And we did break up. Now, after that, I just continued living my life. Though I knew that this was probably not what I should have done. Something inside of me knew that, he didn't really do anything to deserve it other than I didn't think that we were um, quite compatible. So shortly thereafter, I think, the enemy must have known that, there was a vulnerability there. So this particular person that had a relationship with when I first came into the country came back and um, then said he wanted us to get married and all of that. To cut the long story short, I knew that I was in the country, I was working, I had the work authorization, but I really didn't have a green card. I couldn't leave the country, and at that time, I was really desirous to leave the country. So, here comes this man that had cheated on me and came back and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm glad you're still single. I believe God, wants us to be together." All of that. I believe the Lord was telling me, but I wasn't really listening because that was what I desired you know so at that point something was telling me this man has what you think you want, basically, and that you're really in between another crossroad where what you desire in flesh is calling you, but what you need in the spirit is also calling you. So it's like God is reaching out to you through my husband, and then the enemy is kind of dangling this bait in front of me. Now, unfortunately, I fell for that bait, you know. And to be honest with you, like I said, I'm someone that had known God from when I was young. And I felt like, yes, I'm going to spend the rest of my life serving God in ministry. I'm going to minister to people. I'm going to preach the gospel. I'm going to tell people about God. So I knew that my life was meant to be sold out to God. But it had been just topsy-turvy, unfortunately, for a long time. And so when I was caught in this crossroad, I I kind of I tried to move it or relegate that feeling to the side that could I be making a mistake. I even told God, if I'm making a mistake, you have to stop me. I ended up living in Chicago and moving to be with this person in New Jersey. And by the time we moved, we started planning to get married. You know, we wanted to go get married in Nigeria, so I moved to New Jersey and we were planning a marriage. To cut the long story short, to get the marriage, we had to get a license. So we went to the court, we got a marriage license, started planning to go to Nigeria to get married. Now, to cut the long story short, everything went downhill from there. This person lost his job. I could not get a job. He got another job. He lost that job. It was just like we were in the dark. I knew that I had made a mistake at that point. I was really just begging God for mercy. God had mercy on me. All through, I knew that God's love was still constant, but I knew at the back of my mind that I might have missed it with this decision that I made. And I was asking God, please help me to retrace my steps. Help me to fix this. And I was praying and always in God's presence, crying out to Him to help me fix this situation. And so we were there in New Jersey. We found out that he was AS, I was AS. And so in terms of having children, there was a possibility that there could be a sickler child. And so that was another downside, right, to that situation we were in. And then again, we found out that even for the documentation for myself, I was not able to regularize my documentation unless I left the country, and that I was probably going to be given a ban for 10 years at least before I could make it back. And so I was in hell, if you will. I was in hell, but I kept praying. Like, God, do not leave me here. Save me from this situation. And to cut the long story short, yet again, I discovered that this person was cheating with a very, very close family friend that was also married. And how did I know? I was sitting in my office and the Lord just spoke to me and said, this is this person's password to his email. He had my password to my email. He refused to give me his password, and I didn't think anything to it. I just forgot about it and kept living my life. But God knew that I needed to see some things. So I sat down without even thinking. I didn't even ask God, what is his password? I wasn't even looking. He just said, this is this person's password. And lo and behold, I put it in. I didn't even have to put it in a second time. The one time I put it in, He got in, that was his password, and I saw all sorts of things. I realized he had been with, cheating with so many other different women, and one of them was even pregnant, and it was that same person that I said was married and was supposed to be a family friend. And I found out, and at that point, it was like my life was over, because I knew that, oh my God, if I thought about a billion things that could go wrong in this world, I would never have thought that this would happen to me yet again. But here I am, and it was devastating. I I thought this is the end of my life. This is the end of my world. I'm supposed to be a minister, and here I am with all of these mistakes. Here I am with a situation where it might lead to this woman, even though I didn't have a white wedding. I'd gone to court. This person is essentially divorced. I know my mom doesn't like me using that word, because she's like, you never got married under the church, you never got married traditionally, it was you just doing your own thing, so it doesn't count. But anyways, I know the state of mind that I was in at that time. And all of through this process, I thought, okay, I didn't even think about, my now husband then. I just felt, okay, we had broken up a while ago. That was that. Now this is my situation. And I was just begging and asking God to fix it. I was willing to still try to make things work. Okay, this person is your child. Let's work through it. But eventually, it just did not end up working out. And this person knew that the best thing was for us to go our separate ways. It was devastating, because in my heart, I felt like my life would be over if the relationship went downhill. And so I was just from my own spiritual sanity, I felt like I cannot bear the thought of being separated from God forever, because if I'm in a situation where I've made this great mistake, is there any way out? Can God forgive me? Can I still be called a child of God? And so I was trying everything within my power to make it work. I was praying, I went to meet this man, let's go talk to a pastor, but all fell to deaf ears. Suffice it to say, we had to go our separate ways. And so I remember I was in my room one day and I was so devastated. I thought, God, I can't possibly be your beloved daughter anymore. I failed you. I made a grave mistake. I'm so far away from you. I don't know how I can go on. So many times I started to think about even ending it all. I was like, let me just commit suicide and just leave this world, because I'm just not making things better. So why am I here? And so I was just dejected and devastated. It was really, really, really dark, trying period for me. And I was telling God in my room, I was praying, I was reading the word, I was really brokenhearted, and said to God, I cannot possibly be your beloved daughter anymore. And I was weeping and crying. And I remember I got a call. Who did I get a phone call from? It was from my husband now. And he says to me, I have a word from you, and for you from God. He said, I should tell you that you are still his beloved daughter. And that shook me to my core, because that was a question that I was asking God right at that moment. And this is someone I had not spoken to in a while. And he gives me a call and gives me this message. And I was just like, my Lord and my God, how great is your love, that you knew the state of mind that I was in, and you took it upon yourself to send your son to speak to me. That just shows you about how God is thinking about you. Even when you are in the worst situation possible, even when you're in a situation that is of your own doing, even if it's a mess that you created, a mess that you made, you know, even if it's a mess that you made, He is still thinking about you, and that mess truly can be a message. I I was so relieved, because I knew that this had to be God. This is God showing me that He still loves me. And that was all the encouragement I needed. That was all the hope I needed to continue to forge on. And so after that, He said that he needed to deliver another message, but he needed to deliver that in person. I'm sure you know where we're going here. And when he said that, he was like, okay, I need to deliver this to you in person, but I'm doing some things now, so is it okay to come? I think he mentioned in about 2 or 3 months, and I said, that's fine. I was in another state at this time, and I didn't think anything of what he said in terms of needing to deliver the message in person. I just was like, okay. I was just so happy that God remembered me and gave me this message. Now, I think a month or a few weeks after, I ended up going to, it was in Massachusetts. I ended up going to that state because that was where my sister was at. So I ended up going to Massachusetts, and I got to Massachusetts. The day I get there, I didn't even remember to call him to tell him I was in town because he needed to give me another message. In my mind, I thought, oh, okay, it's going to come in a few months, like he said. So I didn't think anything of it. I was still grieving the loss of this situation that I was in. And so he calls me the day I get to Massachusetts and says to me, oh, where are you? And I told him, well, you must be in the spirit because I'm in Massachusetts. I'm right in the state where you are. And he said, oh, that's great. Can I come see you? And I was like, absolutely. So I gave him the address. He comes to see me at my sister's place. And mind you, all through this time, he does not know the situation I'm at because at that time, um, nobody really knew what was going on with me. So he comes to see me that day and tells me how much God loves me and that God has a plan for me and that God, you know, hasn't given up on me. He gave me all those wonderful messages that just touched my heart. That God is giving me another chance and is reaching out to me where I'm at. And in his mind, he thinks I'm still in that situation that I was in. And so I had to tell him that, do you know that me and this person, this is the situation that we're at? And he was shocked because he said he gave this message basically when God said to move, and he just obeyed. And he gave me a call when God said to give me a call, and all he did was just obey. And so I was just mesmerized at the goodness of God. Trust me, all through this, I still didn't think anything of it other than, oh, this person has been a really good friend. And so I I didn't think anything. I didn't think too much of it. I just was relieved once again and comforted in how much God loves me and was intentional about me and trust me, that's how He is with every one of us. And so he sent me this email almost right after telling me that he is the one that God has for me. And, that, this is God's chance. I don't know if he said last chance, I can't remember. But I remember reading that message and I was not really happy with the tone because in my mind I was like, I'm still trying to get myself together. I'm not ready for anything. I just want to, take a deep breath. And so I still was refusing because obviously at that time I was still in this entanglement to grow with this person and I still needed to get myself out of that entanglement. And a part of me was still hoping that that situation will work itself out. I was still hopeful. I was still praying. I was still trying everything. So I was not in that frame of mind yet uh, to receive that message. And so that was what I said to him. I was like, okay, God is going to tell me and I'm going to wait for God to give me that confirmation. And that was it. And I knew all that was going on with him on his side. I need to have another session with both of us so we can hear his side. I'm not going to try to speak for him. I know some of what he did on his side, but I will let him tell his story. If you do want to hear from him as well, if you want us to have maybe a session together, please comment below and just say, yes, we need a couple session and we'll try to make it happen. All right, so just to wrap this up, right? Long story short of it is that God is so good. God is so intentional. Even in all of these, I was still not yielding to the will of God for my life. God had to send so many people. He had to send pastors He had to send ministers. He had to send prophets to tell me, this man is the man that I have for you. This man is your husband. This man has been praying for you. This man loves you. And as much as I resisted it, I got to the point where God confirmed and told me, look, if you want your life to be beautiful and to be all that it could be, you could yield to God's perfect will, or you could go after God's permissible will, where you go after what you want and you ask God to come into that situation. And yes, God is a God that has mercy. He could make things work. But is that God's perfect will? No. But there are times where God gives you an opportunity to yield to His perfect will. And it might look difficult. It might look like, I don't know I'm going to carry this. I don't know I'm going to do this. But Jesus, he got to the cross and he was such a heavy burden, heavy load to bear. It was like, God, if this cup can pass from me, please let it pass. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And eventually Jesus made it to the cross, and Jesus paid that price. And here we are. We're redeemed, we're saved by that sacrifice. And that was the point where I got to, where God told me that when you yield to my perfect will, it's going to be a beautiful life. You're going to be very happy that you did. And then God started to open my eyes, and I started to see that yes, this person is everything I could ever want. Everything I could ever want. And why was I so blind to this right from the get-go? But I thank God that He never let go. He never, ever stopped fooling with Him. I look at my life now, and it's been nothing short of amazing. It's been nothing short of glorious. I look at the journey that He has taken me and my family on. I look at our children, and I'm grateful to God every single day of my life. I look at our children, and I'm like, thank God I obeyed and followed after your will, oh God. Thank God it wasn't, I didn't go after, yes, I did make a mistake, went after my will. But when I was faced with that choice, when God gave me a second chance to say, this is my will for your life, but I'm not going to force my will on you. I will never do that. You will have to choose to go with what my will is. And that's what I did. I had to forget about my own desires, about everything else, and go after that which God has destined for me, has ordained for me. And it was beautiful. There's actually more to the story, but I will park it, and either when myself and my husband do a couple session, we'll talk more about the journey and all the things that God has done, and how God comes through in situations where it doesn't seem like there's a possibility here. And that is why I am always assured of the love of God. There is no time that God has not come through for me in situations that look impossible. Matter of fact, when me and my husband got married, we ended up getting married in Nigeria. I didn't have documentation. I knew that I was going to be given a ban. I was not even just given a 10-year ban, I was given a lifetime ban. That is a story that I will articulate down the line. This was a lifetime ban that I was given, but here I am, I'm in the United States. God made it happen. And there's just so many things, so many testimonies of the goodness of God that assures me each and every day that God is so intentional about us, that God loves us. He loves us in spite of us. And every day I'll continue to sing that song, and I'll continue to remind you that God loves you in spite of your mistakes, no matter how many they are. You know, you might have done multiple abortions. You might have been married a few times. You might have done this. You might have done that. Yes, religion will condemn you. Absolutely. Religion will condemn you and say, oh no, you're supposed to be like 100%. But Jesus Himself did not condemn the woman caught in adultery. He said, go and sin no more. If Jesus will still give an adulterer a chance, if God will still call an adulterer, you know, a great-grandmother of Jesus, and be in the lineage of Jesus, there's nothing that you could do that would ever separate you from the love of God. And so when you think about this love, when you think about how much He cares and loves you, what is our response to this love? Our response is that we make him the greatest desire of our heart, just as he has made us. He has made us the most important. He has made us in his image. He's given us everything that pertains to life and godliness. He has sacrificed his own life for us. And so the response to this is really to give him everything, to make him our everything. And that is what he asked of me after my marriage. He said, I am the greatest desire of your heart. I have to be. Because I have realized that every time other desires come in and try to sneak their way in, if I do not put my guardrail up and hold on to God, there's every possibility that you could slip. Those things will look very harmless. It could be entertainment, social media, any number of things. But then once they begin to take you away from God, that's where you lose it. And so I pray for you today that God will be the greatest yearning of your heart, that nothing will ever separate you from his love, that you will realize how loved you are and know that you're going to spend forever with him, that he's waiting for you, that he longs for you, that he has gone to prepare a place for you, and he's going to come back to take you to himself. That's it for today on the love factor. God's love is everything. God's love is not just the message, it is the answer that we need. It's the answer to every problem. It's the answer to every situation in this world and even the world to come. God bless you, and we'll talk to you next time on the Love Factor. Thank you. Your presence is the flood, and I'm caught in wonder. You have taken me over, you have won.